I think we are on a slow road, call it 3 to 9 months to Tesla going private. If we're going to put the probability on it, today it's about 2/3, so call it 65%. That's up from where it was a week ago, just after this, when we thought it was more or less 50-50. And effectively what's happened is each of the past 2 days, we've gotten more of the pieces that this, in fact, is something that Tesla is going to aggressively pursue, which is important. But also some of the big unknowns, we have a little bit more visibility. You talked a lot about it yesterday in some of these Saudi funds and where they potentially could get the funding behind it. And so at the big picture is twofold. First is that Tesla will perform better as a private company, and I think investors recognize that. And second is I think whether it's public or private, the value of this story is going to be increasing over time.
Gene, when you have reports that the SEC is now questioning or probing the company, does that throw any kind of cold water on potential deal making?
It doesn't. And now we're not legal experts on this topic, but the people that we've talked to, we believe that some of the language that was used that's most in question around funding secured is vague enough that there is no legal risk there. Separately, the means of communication has been well established that they can use Twitter. And last is, should have they notified NASDAQ? And the answer to that is absolutely. I expect a fine will be levied against Tesla in this. It will be a small fine. My guess is probably below $50,000. That is in terms of not notifying NASDAQ about this pending news, because it's a black eye for NASDAQ. So if you put all that together, there's no legal risk of, for example, Elon Musk being exited from the company or going to jail. This is a small, I think, a small housekeeping risk in terms of how they communicated and made an error in how they communicated to NASDAQ.
Phil LeBeau, it hasn't been long since there were headlines that Tesla was asking some suppliers for refunds. Now there's this move by Elon Musk arguing that perhaps Tesla should be taken private. How is this move likely to affect, if at all, Tesla's supply chain, its relationship with suppliers, these efforts to get more profitable in the near term?
I think they're separate from each other, John. I think whatever Tesla is doing in terms of the operation side of the business, for the most part, is going to be fairly insulated from the boardroom drama, if you will, and whether or not this is a public or a private company. Having said that, there is an aspect of the operations of Tesla that could impact the decisions of a decision of the board or of major shareholders in the future, and it comes down to the performance of the company relative to profitability, relative to raising capital, relative to cash burn. Let's make some assumptions here. Let's assume that they do fantastic over the next 6 months. Elon Musk could say, "Look, the operation side of the company is doing great. This is the way we should go forward." On the flip side, what happens if they do not perform up to expectations? What happens if Tesla has to do much bigger capital raise than previously expected? Will shareholders sit there and say, "Boy, I'm not sure if this is the right move going private right now"? So it could have some impact. But in terms of the boardroom drama impacting the operation side, I don't think that that's likely to happen.
Gene, the other piece of this is if you have the Saudis coming in for this deal, is what it would mean in terms of CFIUS and moving past regulators, especially given the fact that lawmakers are now making that board stronger. What do you think?
So we got to look at the math, and it starts at $82 billion enterprise value, and that's the supposed, $420 takeout price. But then you do some of the math that Elon Musk has done. We separately, and before that, did some similar math, which projects that this is probably a $25 to $30 billion amount will need to come up to actually bring Tesla private. So the reason why I mention that is that Elon Musk it's unlikely that he's going to want a larger shareholder than 20%. He's at 22%, which implies $16 billion coming from the Saudis. That would be 20%. It would be a non-voting control. So my understanding of CFIUS is that becomes an issue if there is control at stake. And in this, it would be clearly non-controlled. Now, where it gets dicey is if he's unable to get other financing, the other 10 billion to get to the 27 billion or so. If he's unable to get that and he needs to rely more on the Saudis, that could trip something where it ends up being a majority and causes CFIUS to step in. I think it's unlikely that that happens, though.